Welcome to the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm 𝗤𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁. With me, as always, is Mark 𝗕𝗁𝗁. Mark, how you doing over there? What do you want to discuss today?
Well, you and me were talking earlier about maybe branching off to a different segment. You know, we added the Tuesday tip a couple months ago, and that seems to be a success. But, I think we got to talk more about deals. And what you and me were talking about earlier is I really like it. We're talking about taking two people that are part of a deal recently. Maybe you have a buyer, always having the buyer, but maybe a buyer and their attorney, or a buyer and their lender, or a buyer and their broker, and talk about the deal that just closed and the 15 ways it almost didn't. I think there's getting transactions done now versus 20 years ago is totally different. It used to be pretty done as once you got under contract, it was pretty smooth. So getting real people in, real deals, and hearing kind of the perspective from both sides, and talking about all the problems of, and it might even be fun if you have some playful people of like, yeah, I can't believe you almost didn't let the deal die over there, something like that. But I think if anyone's out there that might want to volunteer and be a guinea pig for something like this, I think it might be a fun segment that maybe we could start.
Yeah, I dig it, because like everyone loves the interaction, the stories, right? There's a reason like reality TV exists. Everyone wants to hear the stories. And then it's also how we get the most like on the ground, like information. What did you get for rents? What was the trouble? Like it's real tangible info. So I think we got some runway there.
Yeah. Think about you and Chance. You and Chance could probably get on here, talk for a half hour, laugh. He could tell us about how you're kind of bullheaded about two decisions that you didn't make, or you can't believe that you guys could probably have some fun going back and forth, and we could enjoy listening, stuff like that. So any volunteers out there, we'll be open to doing that.
Well, now it's got to happen because we threw it out there, so we're pot committed.
I hear you. That's the way I react, so I like it.
Nice. All right, what do we housing provider tip of the week? What do we got?
Well, you know what? I was in Florida this weekend and it snowed here. So I got to miss the first kind of drizzle of snow, but it got our office buzzing about snow and coverage and so forth. It's very important to handle snow certain ways. So I just want to throw a couple kind of tips out there. So city of Chicago, I heard through a little birdie that they're going to start really finding people for not shoveling the driveway this year. So they haven't done that in the past. I mean, it's been a while since they really started doing that, since I've seen people get those tickets, but that ticket's pretty hefty if you don't shovel your city sidewalk. And if you're a corner building, you got a lot more risk there as well too. So for getting in trouble for that. Plus it's just being a good neighbor as well too. So make sure that you are shoveling your sidewalk, whether it be through a vendor or you got it worked into the lease with your tenants. Suburbs, I see a lot of suburb landlords that it's vacant, so they don't shovel the driveway, or they don't even shovel a path. So be a good landlord, or welcome people that might want to rent your place. Make sure you have a clear path to get into your house. Not to mention all the snow they're going to drag in if you don't have that clear path of your brand new, clean, vacant unit. So just kind of keep that in mind. And one more tip: try to keep the snow out of pictures in your marketing. That is always it's always and especially come March. People can always time how long your place been on the market. If it's March and April and you still got snow in your pictures. So just some very winter friendly tips for all you landlords out there.
On the flip side of that, if it's February, the first week of February, and you see some Christmas decorations up there, go ahead and give that person a call. Not a bad idea.
Yes. So.
All right. Awesome. All right. We're going to be covering Pilsen. This is going to be a good one here. So once again, we have to say Mike Lasser's name because he was the one who gave us the introduction. So Mike's been all over this podcast. But today's guest grew up in Edgewater in Humboldt Park, a blue demon out of DePaul, bought his first building in Humboldt Park where it actually didn't even have a swinging door in it. But from there, he bought his first building in Pilsen and focused almost exclusively on Pilsen and the surrounding neighborhoods. Done a ton of vintage restoration on these apartments, which is a really cool area that we're going to dive into. And just talk about the importance of building a community and anchoring down in one spot.
2.5 decades of talking we could do about Pilsen today. I don't think we've only had a couple episodes where we could dive that deep into a neighborhood. So I'm really excited here.
Yeah, and this guy's full of energy as he's pacing around one of his units right now. So without further ado, Gordy Payene, welcome to the show. Gordy, how are you doing today?
What's up, gentlemen? How are you guys?
We're good. We're excited for this one. Someone who's anchored down for 20 years in an area and seen it just explode. This is going to be good.
It's been a lot of fun. It's been almost exclusively fun, actually. It's a great place. It's a great sandbox to play in.
Yeah. So, Gordy, let's talk about all our listeners. We get a lot of questions on, oh, my God, how's Pilsen? It's so hot. I want to invest there. But you started in 98. So give us just a visual. What was it like in 98? Do you have any remembrance of pricing and just what the area was like? Can you paint that picture for us? And we'll take it from there.
Absolutely, guys. Again, thank you. So your listeners kind of know what it was like in late 90s. I was trying to buy in Pilsen, having already purchased in Humboldt. And a lot of people were dissuading me that were down here that were realtors for one reason or another. But the housing stock was pretty neglected. And I'm talking the vaulted sidewalks. If nobody knows what that is, the vaulted sidewalks are a result of raising this level of the city by over 6 feet from 1900 to 1930s through the WPAs. And they were burying sewer pipe. And so the problem is that you had this disparity between the original level of the city and now the higher level. So everything is six steps down from the new sidewalks to your extant property. So these vaulted sidewalks have been around for probably 60 years and were starting to all fail. So you'd walk around, and in the Pilsen sidewalks, you would have a bunch of doors covering huge holes that would go down 6.5 feet. And you basically had a really, really rough urban environment as far as kids playing, and there's, you couldn't cover all these holes perfectly. That was one issue. It was like you're walking down half concrete, half covered up holes, and then the housing was really neglected. It wasn't a happening neighborhood, and there was a lot of brick neglect and a lot of roofing neglect. And as I've heard said, and I think it's pretty true, fires don't bring down buildings. It's the water. And there was a lot of heavy water damage over the years. So you're dealing with a lot of high ticket items that you have to deal with. And
so what attracted you? Why? This doesn't sound awesome.
I think because when you're a kid who's making it through your $35,000 a year job and you really want some property, you have to buy what you can. And I noticed that when I was in Logan Square, Humboldt, you're about 2,400 west, about 2,400 north. Well, Pilsen's 1,800 south and 1,600 west, so you're closer to downtown. So I'm like, well, geographically, Pilsen is an easier deal for somebody who works downtown. Plus, you have the medical center, which had all the hospitals: Rush, UIC, Cook County, American Psychiatric Hospital, or the Illinois Psychiatric Hospital. A lot of employers around here. So I'm like, and it has a train system going right through it. So I figured if Bucktown and Wicker Park popped so extensively in the 80s and 90s, why wouldn't Pilsen eventually pop? And there were a lot of detractors that didn't think so. But I'm like, at this price point, I could kind of deal with it. And the great thing about the neighborhood is a lot of people had nuclear families. And if you had a problem with a gangbanger, you could just talk to somebody's dad and smooth it out. It was a much more enjoyable situation socially than what I had grown up in. So I found it to be very amicable.
That's awesome. So before we dive further, I do want to hit on that community part, right? Because that's what Pilsen's been known for. Is during some of the riots, we heard about gangbangers protecting the community. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, you give us a little piece of that for someone who's not familiar with the area. Like why it's so unique. Like why does that exist in Pilsen and not in other parts of the city?
I think in other parts of the world, sometimes gangs are not there to be provoke or participate in illicit activity. Sometimes gangs are really what they call, neighborhood organizations that have heft in case you don't have any municipal police. And some countries don't have municipal police; they just have federal police. So you're really left with a neighborhood that has to fend for itself. I think some of that culture can carry over into America and different subcultures within America. I think Pilsen's not excluded from that. You have, or maybe more so in the past, you had people that really stuck up for the neighborhood. They may or may not have been in gangs, but the reality is they had a very strong sense of pride of place, and they wouldn't allow things to happen, such as when these riots were going down. They just grabbed a bunch of, dumpsters and put them on the main street so no one could come turn off of Ashland, and said, hey man, this is our neighborhood, no one's going to screw it up. And it was pretty cool, because when you have people at home looking through their window at what's going on in the street, you have moms that could be around to look around for what may be happening, and you have young adults that can kind of look around and say, hey, this is not fitting in right now, I wonder what's going on. You have, in my opinion, a sounder environment. And it used to have the same thing, West Town, all those near Northwest neighborhoods, but then everyone condoed out and then had a sliding glass door and nobody was home during the day because everybody was at work, which is great. But the downside of that is it's a shopping spree for burglars. So there's always a give take with a really fancy neighborhood versus an average neighborhood. And I call Pilsen a working class, average, kind of wonderful neighborhood for that reason.
So you start off with your building there in 98. What was it that motivated you? Was it just you did really good on the first deal? What did growing your portfolio there in Pilsen look like?
It looked like a bunch of stacks of brick that needed emergency medicine.
Okay.
I'm serious, dude. I mean, on the north side, you had stuff that was about 20 to 30 years older, maybe. I'm not sure the exact age discrepancy between the near south and near north side, but this stuff has been heavily neglected. So the price point is really the addiction. It's really like what gets you pumped is because I bought my 4-foot for $150 in 98, and you could hear the maggots. I don't know if you know this, but you can actually hear maggots if there are enough of them, and they were chattering in the basement because the sewer line was broken, and that sound was loud, and it gives you an idea of how bad the properties were that I was buying. But that, and 4 days after I bought it, the second floor bathroom fell on the first floor, and 3 little girls were staring down the hole that used to be the toilet area down into the storefront. I was looking up at them. I'm like, holy cow, what did I get myself into? And stuff out of cartoons, And I think the reason why I got into it and started buying more and more is because I kind of, being ADD, I kind of enjoy emergency room medicine. I like something happening and me having to deal with it and just using crude implements to fix something and get her done. And the neighborhood's pretty happy with you when you just do your job. You don't have to, you could hit singles and doubles all day, and everyone appreciates the batting average because the housing stock is really rough. I hope I'm not being disparaging to anyone, but there's a lot of rough property in Pilsen still.
Yeah. So Gordy, were you doing these rehabs yourself? Like a lot of guys would walk away saying, hey, I don't want to touch this. Like, it sounds like you dove right in though.
That's where the rub is because I had enough confidence growing up around a dad who used to work on pretty much anything because he came off of a farm. So I kind of didn't have too much of a fear of physical objects like I did math.
So going back, would you still go that route? Right? Like, I'm sure there's lessons learned. Like, you'd still go that hands-on route.
Absolutely, because you can't fall any farther than you have already fallen. And so, I mean, it's just like you're never going to be afraid of a building if you've already been to the depths. You're like, okay, we have to do joist replacement. Well, how does that look? We'll get a union carpenter in here. Let's get some lamb beams. Let's get this straightened out ASAP. And that's where it goes.
The great thing about what you just said, like dealing with the joists and maybe jacking it up a couple inches, like once you know how to do those things, or once you know who to call to do those things, in my thing, it ends up being a total advantage, whether it be once you know how to do a fire property or once you understand how to deal with the overhead sewer issue, like those things all become advantages.
Absolutely. And your relationships, what you guys do right now is you're joining a bunch of people together that didn't know each other, but are starting to know each other. So you are the next generation of information conduit where people can go, hey, this guy is really good at contesting taxes in Cook County. This guy's really good at commercial in the western suburbs. So you guys are providing something that's integral to all good real estate, which is relationships. So that's why I'm proud to be able to be on your show, because I think it's really cool that you can connect people the way you do electronically. And everyone, we're all worshiping our smartphones, so we might as well learn something. So kudos to you guys.
Well, thank you. I'm blushing.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, for real, man.
So Gordy, let's talk about like the actual housing stock that you've hit on a few times here. If I'm looking to do a rehab in Pilsen, or let's say I'm looking to take down a building. It's my first building. I find a 4-unit. I like it. You know, my numbers on my little spreadsheet work out. What are some of those gotchas from the construction side or the maintenance side that are probably more unique to Pilsen than other parts of the city?
The deteriorated brick. Okay, freeze thaw cycles happen sometimes 5 times per day in the winter. Freeze thaw, freeze thaw. So that is a bunch of moisture content in that brick that has relaxed and now it's expanding. Then it's going to relax again and expand. Sun up, sun down, years and years. Try 140 years of that and see where your brick ends up. And brick replacement can be $50 per brick when you're using somebody who knows what they're doing. So you have to be really careful. And the brick is going to get you. Roofs are always going to get you, but that's everywhere, you know. But if you don't have a really good structural person looking at a multi-unit, you're really doing yourself a financial disservice. You have to spend money to make money in that situation, and you get somebody of premier quality that doesn't have a fantastic personality but knows their engineering. And you get them in there and you say, give it to me straight. And if you have to walk away, you walk away, but you've given that seller some information about their property that's pretty valuable to them. So you still done a civil service, but you took care of yourself, because that's one thing that's a gotcha for sure. Another thing that I'm glad you guys asked about this is building density. There are so many buildings stacked up to each other, and there is one park, Dvorak Park, and there's another park, Harrison Park. Other than that, it's a bunch of stacks of brick. And you have to be mindful of the fact that your material has to get to your property somehow. And it has to come down a narrow alley that everyone's using kind of as a street. This place is so dense. And if you don't have any easement to get material in and out of the building, it becomes kind of a logistical issue for you. So you have to buy things in smaller increments in order to just be able to service your property correctly. So building density is definitely a unique characteristic of this neighborhood. I don't think it's totally unique to all neighborhoods in Chicago, but it definitely is here. You have coach houses, then you have the main building. The coach houses were like the original building because the sewers were not constructed yet when they first started building in Pilsen. So everyone stayed away from the street side, and they set their property all the way in the back. It was a little hovel of a building. And then once the sewers got established, then people started building on the front end of their property. So you have the back building, the front building, you have a lot going on in here. And that's what makes it so fun. I mean, basically people come here and they get wowed by the old world style, especially if you go east of like Carpenter, you'll see a lot of little tiny streets and they're just fun, you know, but dense.
I never knew why there's so many coach houses there.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's awesome.
Yeah, when they were doing a rehab on Throop and 18th Street, or Throop, however you choose to pronounce it, the guys were digging out old sewer and they found the old logs that they used to hollow out in order to make sewers out of. And they used to use bale wire and oakum to reclose the hollowed out tree trunks that were being used as sewers.
Wow.
So it goes back.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, we talked earlier about the sunken down property, the buildings and the raised up streets. Like, was there, and you see these skywalks, I might be calling it the wrong word. Some of you might call it different.
Catwalks, yeah.
What does anyone need to know about kind of like that setup or look for? Is there water issues you have to look for, proper drainage down there? Like, is there anything unique to that style of house?
Well, you have all these buildings that are originally built are sitting on river rock. And the extant river rock is just a wonderful foundation. So it can take a lot of water incursion, it'll go through. The only thing you have to do is you have to remortar the exterior and interior of your foundation. But the great benefit to having a sunken lot like that is that you do have access on the side of your building to your foundation. You just go underneath your catwalk of your gangway, and then if you have an access through a basement window, you can go out there and you can basically clean out, kind of do a quick grind job and then retuck your river rock on the outside, which will really prevent water incursion. And the buildings are so close to each other. I'm looking at a couple right now across the street. There's only a 2-foot gap from one's eave to the other one's eave. So you're not dealing with a tremendous amount of water coming down between the buildings. It's really not an issue.
Got it.
Interesting.
Let's talk about the interiors a little bit, because Pilsen's known for having, these smaller bedrooms, unique designs. Talk to us as if we've never been into a 3-unit inside in Pilsen.
Well, you guys are very insightful. Thanks for leading a great question. The reality is you're absolutely correct. The Victorian bedrooms are usually 7x8, 7x9, which are glorified closets by today's standards. But because at that time when they were building these buildings, they basically had a change of clothes and a cot for personal possessions. And that's why you have to basically, when you have a small 2-bedroom like that, you basically take out the demising wall, and then you have like a bowling alley bedroom, I call them. They're like 15 feet long by 7.5 feet wide. And you haven't taken down anything structurally. You just took down a partition wall, basically. They usually have a window in them because people didn't have electricity. These buildings predate electricity and indoor plumbing. So they had all these windows everywhere, so you could just bomb ambient light through. And they had gas lighting, but of course, gas was going to be expensive for them.
Got it. So is tenant expectations, like, is everyone in Pilsen just used to that, 7x9 room? It is what it is. I mean, when in some of your buildings, what are some things you look at and be like, I can't buy this because it has X, Y, Z?
I can never say that about a brick building. I can say that about a frame building because if you're dealing with water damage and neglect, that frame building is pretty tired. Mm. And I wouldn't touch a frame unless I was getting a phenomenal. I bought a frame once and I enjoyed it. I mean, it's very workable, but I don't think that the value is really there because of the age of the structure. And most likely, I mean, you went through the First World War, the Second World War, the Depression, a neighborhood that never really saw an incredible zenith of an economy. And then urban blight, when they built the suburbs, a lot of people left, and it left a lot of property kind of decimated in the 60s and 70s and through the 80s. So, I mean, you have to be really mindful of a neighborhood's history. And this never had, the golden era, I'm sure, was when they were building the railroads and they were building these buildings and everyone dancing a jig. But I think after a while, they kind of waned and you had a lot of despair economically. So I look at a brick building and know that, okay, I still have about 4 standing walls and some mortar, and I could have that ground tucked out for 60 grand and really have something shine, because the architecture is very significant. But a frame, I don't think I would want to get into. And that's just me. I don't want to be mean to anybody, but that's my personal preference.
Yeah, we've actually talked about on the show. It's through trial and error, I've landed in that same boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Gordy, let's talk about, you mentioned a timeline there. You buy in 98, things are going well, but it's not like the neighborhood turned in 02 or 06. Like you hunkered down there. I guess, when did you start to see, hey, this thing might actually pop? I know you had an inkling with just the location, but when did you actually see money coming in or development when you said, okay, it's getting real?
It was the most gradual inclination. I know you're not going to believe me, but it's been a very gradual inclination. And when, I'd say when everyone was getting a pop in 05, 06, people started thinking it was sexy. But there have been evolutions of waves of people that found it interesting, because it would cool off because there's other neighborhoods to go check out. And I think '05, '06, when the run up happened, everyone was looking for an asset like they are now. And that's when it kind of got to be a very easy place to rent, where you had like 10, 12 people waiting to go check it out. And then it was a very novel thing for people to see 14-inch high baseboard and some of the opulent, trim and door features in the windows the size of doors. A lot of people hadn't seen that in their ranch house that they grew up in the suburbs. So that '05, '06 is when people really were like, hey, we have a really unique housing product in Pilsen. And that's when the restaurants have always been here. The good people have always been here. That's when it really got a lot of notoriety.
Yeah, that's crazy about how like the restaurants have been there forever for the most part.
Yeah,
some of those
doing great work.
Great work. Yeah. So if anything, they all got a good payoff over the last 10 years too, just kind of being there so long for their families. Talked about new construction, because obviously that's a 120, 130-year-old city. Stuff starts getting old and building new, or things burn down. Like what does new construction look like in there over the last decade? Are people actually coming in there and tearing anything down that's there? Is it just kind of open lots that have been kind of built on? Like, where people seek the opportunity when it comes to building new?
Another good question. I don't think that people are really tearing a whole lot down unless it's really, really damaged goods. But they are using the lots, and there was not a lot of fire and arson in Pilsen's history, so there weren't a lot of lots, but there were enough. There have been fires, and so there are empty lots, and they have pretty much gotten built by now. So there's more density than ever before, and the new construction has definitely been taking off, and it creates another opportunity for your higher earners to come in and enjoy the neighborhood. And so it kind of is a interesting blending of stuff that is more of a cottage bungalow versus your 2,300 square foot lofted 2-story condo. So you're actually having a greater depth of housing stock now because of the new stuff. But they're coming in, yeah, definitely. But they're not taking down substantive properties. They're just taking down whatever is being sold as pretty much a tear down. And there's, like we talked about, there's stuff that's just settling in,
Before I ask my next question, let me ask this: as far as like boundaries to the neighborhood, like what's kind of the boundary on the west side before you get into what little village? Like where is?
I was going to ask that because a broker will tell you it's 𝗏𝗴𝗃𝗃.
Yeah.
What is the actual cutoff to the west?
Yeah, believe me, I'm very sensitive to that. Growing up around brokers who are calling West Humboldt West Wicker Park, and I'm like, come on. Yeah, so definitely the strict boundary for Pilsen is east of Ashland and all the way to the expressway at east of Halstead. But the working use of the term Pilsen goes pretty much to Western. And people would say, well, that's heart of Chicago, and they'd be right. Anything west of Ashland by the broker's map from 100 years ago would say that is the heart of Chicago, not Pilsen. But people have combined the two, and they call Pilsen anything from Halstead all the way to Western. And then once you get into past Western, you're in East Douglas Park. If you're north of Cermak, and if you're south of Cermak, you're in the north end of Little Village. And so I would say the boundaries right now are probably, people are defining Pilsen all the way to Western Avenue, south to Cermak, north to the 16th Street Viaduct, and east all the way to the expressway near Halstead.
What, so based on that question then, like, have you focused your portfolio in all across the entire neighborhood, or are you in certain corners, pockets of the neighborhood? What have you liked?
I think that if you guys were buying anywhere in the world, you would want a really tight area that you were operating in to make your life easier. And that's what I kind of did. I operated right around 18th and Ashland. It's the nexus of the neighborhood, and it's very close to transportation. So I've stuck around there, but I'm not afraid to go find value somewhere. But if you have to travel more than 15 minutes to go to your property, you're not going to visit your property, and you're not going to do as well as if you kept a tight grouping. So that's what I've done. Everything's within a mile of itself for me. That's just a personal preference.
That's awesome. What about the 18th and Ashland? Why did you anchor there?
I anchored there because I was working at Rush Hospital, and I liked the fact that the shuttle bus would take me for free right down there from work. And I knew that other people could do the same thing. So it was just a personal reason. But the other reason is that you had a bunch of really affordable taco joints, and you had grocery stores that were really good at keeping fresh produce on hand. You had the L was right there. To this day, the Ashland bus is 24-hour service. You had the post office right there. You had so many things that made life so easy that I'm like, why? And I was always on a bicycle, right? I lived and died on a bicycle. So for me, it was so fun. I didn't want to be married in my pickup truck running material all the time. So that's what made it easy, is the joy of being able to move so quickly from one shopping option to the other.
Awesome. And now, have you started to go west? I know you said you're going to go. You look for value, but I guess let me rephrase this. What is the difference of looking at something in, call it, heart of Chicago compared to Pilsen?
The difference in value is that people of the next generation do not care where exactly their apartment is if they're close to the rail line. These are young people that are very, very competent at using their bicycles, Uber, and the train to get where they need to go. And they don't like cars. So if you say to somebody, hey, I'm going to put you close to the Damon stop on the Pink Line rather than the Ashland stop, so you're going to be west 4 blocks, or you're going to be all the way to Western, they could care less. They just want to be near the things that their friends are near. And so I don't think there's much of a disparity. Now, people who really want a downtown kind of feel as far as Pilsen goes, they're going to want to be around Racine and 18th, because that's where you have Thalia Hall. You have all these great restaurants. You almost have a walking, open air feel to all the amenities that part of the neighborhood has. So that's going to be ground zero for nightlife and all that. So people will feel as they get further away from that they're less in Pilsen as they get to Western Avenue. But that said, value shoppers are here, right? I mean, this is a Plan B neighborhood. This is not Lincoln Park and all the more wonderful neighborhoods in Chicago that have all these amenities and cost a lot more. This is where you have people that are value shoppers who are first-time job out of college shoppers, and they need value. So if they need more value, they're going to go further west. So you can just follow that rail line all the way through the north part of Little Village and East Douglas, and you'll get almost the same housing stock, and you're going to get a greater value per square foot, obviously. And I have had a lot of success going west of Western Avenue. So you just follow your tenants. Hey, Gordy, you're getting too pricey. Tom, I can't take the rent anymore. I'm moving west. Okay, well, Tom's going to go run westbound and pick something up over there, so we can have a tenant base that can say, hey, I have people at $850 for a small one bedroom, and I have people back in East Pilsen for $1,400. So you can spread that gap, and you can have something for everybody.
Love that answer. That's great. So, Gordy, what has the city done to help revitalize Pilsen? Like, has there been any major developments from the city? Any tax, I know in some communities it's huge. We have the whole South by Invest Southwest right now, but over the years, has the city been, neutral, imperative, not blinking an eye?
I think they've been fair in bringing new sidewalks everywhere, new streets everywhere, paving unpaved alleys all over the place, improving the parks and rebuilding the field house over at Harrison Park. I mean, you look around and this is but the time lapse in my brain has shown that this place has really gotten a lot of attention. Not to say that anything's perfect. I'm just saying that if you're looking for your tax dollars having been spent, they had spent in this neighborhood. And I think people will, I think we kind of have a tendency to dwell on things that are negative, but I can't help but look at all the things that went right. And a lot of things did go right as far as improvements that everyone can enjoy, like curb cuts that everyone can use that are, maybe in a wheelchair or something like that, or just people with strollers, people with shopping carts. Just one of the simple joys of having, I don't see a misuse of money really here. I see a lot of things getting done. The medium pressure gas service is coming in through people's gas, like it is in a lot of neighborhoods. We got new water service on 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗵𝗵. Like I said, the alleys have been repaved. I'm sure there are still needs, but man, this place is getting all new sidewalks right around Harrison Park right now as we speak. So things are going well.
Nice. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So besides offering a wide range of rents for your tenants, how else have you been in the last 20 years? Like what else, being such a community driven neighborhood, what else as the investor, as the housing provider have you done to kind of incorporate yourself into the neighborhood?
The biggest thing is being fair about rent and not charging the last nickel. Because when you drop your price by 50 to 75 or maybe even $100 from market, what you're doing is you're gleaning from a large N of people that want to look at your property, some real Mother Teresa, Al Einsteins that really are great human beings. So if you don't take the last nickel, you're going to get some really high quality people renting from you. And admittedly, your ROI takes longer, but creating micro communities within a building, like say 5 little families, like my place at Racine 18th, it had a great backyard. I put a picnic bench out there. I worked really hard doing an organic garden. We had full-on family style barbecues out back with the tenants. To me, that was a high point. Watching when I used to have my 12 unit, watching everyone watching a Godard film that they rented out of the library at the Art Institute. And they put up a big screen of bed sheet and they were all watching breathless and sitting there having ice cream sundaes together in the storefront unit. And I was standing in the back door looking at the inverse projection of this Godard film. And I'm like, this is why I got into this. And you feel like the arts culture that used to be a little bit stronger here was being taken care of because you were scholarshiping a couple Budweiser artists that went and bagged groceries at Dominic's and came home and did their art. And you gave them work-live spaces they could enjoy. And that bolstered a lot of other people to give their art skills a try while they went and did their money job. And I think that was kind of the working class wonder of this neighborhood was work-live spaces. And those are deteriorating because people are redoing the property. I'm sorry. The better term is they're rehabbing and they're doing higher, better use stuff, which is very common in real estate, right? It's how it goes. But the housing site that was here was pretty neglected, but that gave artists a great opportunity. Now they're pushing west. So that gives me an opportunity to go buy a 5-flat west on 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗵𝗵 for $250,000. And then I'm right back in my old game again of giving people something equitable to work and live in and to throw down some art if they're serious. And that's always been a blast.
Gordy, where do you see Pilsen going from here? Right? Like, what do you think the next 10 years holds for this community?
I think it's going to be as it's always been. This has been your reliable student that always gets a B- or a B. It keeps on rolling. And if you keep the humanity, and that's every paint job of human being here. If you keep the humanity amicable and don't do anything divisive as a lawmaker to say, well, this is what we're going to do now and everyone else is going to suffer other than that. No, everyone has a shake this is going to continue to be a wonderful neighborhood because there's a lot of housing stock here. And you can speak of gentrification, but you have to also talk about the derelict nature that the neighborhood was in. And if somebody didn't come in and fix this stuff, it would fall down. We have plenty of buildings that fall down as far as the parapet caves in and the ceiling caves in because the roof caves in because there wasn't any work done on the parapet wall for 50 years. The facades fall off because they haven't been retuck pointed, or they're taking in water. So as long as everyone gets a fair shake, this neighborhood will continue to do what it's always done, which is provide a vibrant life for everyone to hang out in. And yeah, there's always been gang activity. There's always been car theft. I mean, every neighborhood you can look at has always had these issues that Pilsen has. There's nothing new under the sun in Pilsen. But the one thing you do have, proximity to downtown, a lot of mobility, opportunity, and a very fairly priced stock of housing. And I would suggest anyone do what Jane Wenger did with me when I looked at my first property. She was my first broker. And she said, you know what you're going to do, Gordy? You're going to look at 100 buildings before you even tell me you want to buy one. And that was brilliant information because you know what? You didn't have to go in 100 buildings, but that list came out and you had to go to 10 of them a day, drive by them, do a pencil to paper sketch of what you think you could get out of them, what you liked and didn't like, and move on. And that's a great way to start looking around. Just because you're not going to buy today doesn't mean you shouldn't start looking today, because that's your education. Your education is using a good broker and getting in and out of property, looking at it, figuring it out, and figuring out how you're going to do it, and talking to old crusty guys like me and you guys to figure out how exactly you can pull off your first property. But you know, try to buy as big as you can because you can always grow into it, right? You can always, you know, polish it a little bit better. But if you buy big, like a 4-unit right off the bat, you're going to do yourself a service. Don't be afraid of buying something substantial because you're going to have a quicker ROI because of it.
Nice. All right. I mean, we kind of go out on that answer. That was awesome. That's an awesome way to wrap.
Let's go to wrap.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're going to ask you a handful of questions here and
Sure.
Let's hear what you have to say. So what has been your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do in Pilsen when others wish they could do what you do?
I think because I want to do vintage, I didn't want to gut it like a pig and put it back as a vanilla box. I think my competitive advantage was going and finding older stuff and getting the wow factor out of people walking to a bathroom and seeing a clawfoot tub as opposed to a built-in tub, and going and buying Chicago faucets instead of just some $40 faucet and giving somebody to look at, and buying chandeliers like the one I'm going to flip my camera over to you so you can see. Got this for $130. It's a solid brass one. I think just giving people little points of interest and respect for their soul when they walk into a property is really what I've been able to do. Maintain all the old wood trim, strip it down, make people feel a little bit more emboldened by what they live in.
Love it. Gordy, what is one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property in the Chicagoland area?
I'm really trying to be considerate and
let it fly.
Your first property should be okay. Don't buy a property that you don't think looks good to you, because in January when you have to show up to shovel it, you better be looking down the double barrel of a property that you like and you love, architecturally or volumetrically. Somehow you love that property, because just like who you marry, you're going to be waking up to that property every day as soon as the sun starts shining. So like your property.
That's awesome. It's one of a good, awesome answer. So, all right. What do you do for fun?
I cycle a lot and I swim a lot and weight lift, because it somehow just straightens out my day and it burns out that mild haze of depression that I have. So cardio and weight work.
Nice.
Gordy, what's a good book, podcast, or self-development activity that you would recommend to our listeners?
I would say the book of Proverbs because you need a lot of wisdom in life, right? And you need it in your relationships and everything. So I love Proverbs. So I'll usually start out with some wisdom literature every day, and that helps my brain. Not every day. Let's get real. Not every day starts out like that, but most every day I start out with some wisdom literature. And what I really enjoy reading is stuff on becoming more aware of my motivations. I think motivations are a great thing to study. So I've been reading some Jewish mysticism about wisdom.
Nice. All right. Besides yourself, name one person in your local network that you'd highly recommend to other investors as a quality resource.
A quality resource is consistently, as far as somebody who's going to give you the straight shot in Pilsen regarding realty, I would say Arturo Garza at International Realty Group. Art is a guy who doesn't mince words, and I'll tell you something. I haven't talked to him in probably 2 years, and I talk to him sporadically because I'm not interested in buying more stuff until I finish what I have. Art is always a guy who defends the neighborhood too. And he saw it on closed circuit television, somebody trying to break into his neighbor's property. He went out there and he started yelling at him, and they started shooting at him, and he still chased him. So that is Arturo Garza, New International Realty. Good guy. Right there on 18th Street, across from the Jumping Bean.
Yeah, he's a
shop
badass.
early, shop often.
We'll make sure to link to him in our show. That's awesome. That's a great story.
We got to talk to him now.
Yeah, can we get him on?
Like, man,
you're going to hit up for an invite here. So,
yeah.
Gordy, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? And is there any way they can provide value to you?
Well, provide value is just when you get into real estate, just take care of your tenants. And if you buy in Pilsen, you can always look me up. I'm at pilsenapartments.com, and you can shoot me a note and I can get back to you. And I want everybody to realize that you take a deep breath and make sure your first step is not a misstep by jumping into something.
That's good.
Love it. All right. So I was going to ask about the music hall, but you mentioned in the show, so I was able to pivot real quickly here for our question. So Mark, I'm going to give you multiple choice. Gordy, I'll give you a shot at it as well.
Sure.
All right. So today's question: in which decade did Pilsen have its highest population? Was it in the 1930s, the 1960s, the 1980s, or 2010?
I would say 1930s based on the meatpacking plant and all that stuff down in back of the yards.
Gordy?
I definitely agree. 30s.
1930s. Nice work, gentlemen. Yes. They got a little strain from the Great Depression. Some of the blue collar jobs went out to the suburbs, and there's a steady default until about like the 60s.
When you asked that question, I thought about the book, The Jungle. That's all I thought about. So, yeah. All right, that's good. I always have a better day when I get that question right, when we get the Chicago fact right. So, all right, Gordy, thank you for coming on here. It was an awesome show. Tom, thank you as always. Listeners, please head to our website. We have a whole bunch of people are starting to get back out there networking. We have the list of all of the local meetups. If not on there, we also have the MBOA and their list, MBOA.com, and their list of all of their neighborhood communities in addition to what they offer as far as networking. So thank you, everyone. Tom, thank you again. Gordy, thank you. And we'll see you soon.
Gentlemen, have a great day.
Thanks all.